Face front, true believers. You're listening to the Marvel Saga, episode 11. I'm Nicholas Prom.
And I'm Jerry McMullen. Each issue, we look at Marvel Saga, the 1980s, look back at the origin days of the Marvel Universe, told in story chronological order, not necessarily publishing order.
Right.
So it has been several weeks since we last got together. It's been a busy couple weeks for each of us.
Yes.
Whether it's been weather or family events or, it's the winter season. I think we had colds in there at some point that delayed us from recording. And then we each recently had our hometown cons take place. You were up first. You had I Like Comic Con, which was a first year show in your region.
And that was up in Ridgefield, Washington. It's a short drive out of Portland, and it was great. I mean, I only got to attend Saturday, but I checked in with our friends at the Hero Initiative. Cullen, your co-host on the Worst Comic Podcast Ever, and Terry Allen, who's like the local Hero Initiative rep there. They had Mark Russell, who you guys interviewed on your show.
Yeah, about the Flintstones.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to talk with him and beg him to do a Brother Power the Geek series, but because
he's Portland local, so there'll be a chance for to see him again.
Yeah, I'm serious. Next time I see him, I'm going to present him with the Brother Power issues and be like, please come up with something.
We actually reached out to him this week on Facebook because we ended up talking about Vigilante, the
cowboy hero.
Cowboy. And he used to have a sidekick called Stuff.
Oh, yeah, Stuff, yeah.
And so we presented to Mark that we really want him to do a Stuff miniseries.
Here's the thing. It's got to be Stuff and Wing, the Crimson Avengers sidekick. The ethnic sidekick duo. Never mind that they've both been murdered by supervillains. But nobody stays dead in comics. Not even Wing and Stuff.
Yep. Bring them back.
Yeah. But reeling it back in here. Yeah, I had a fun time at I Like Comic Con. I saw Neil Adams. I didn't have a chance to chat with him, but I mean, I've met Neil before.
Yeah.
Met Steranko.
Nice. Did you get the Steranko experience?
I did get the Steranko experience. My Steranko experience was like I met him at the booth, and then I had been talking with his manager, handler, publisher, J. David Spurlock, who was a neat guy. We talked about he was telling me stories about seeing the Grateful Dead and stuff. So it's the other world I live in, and things like that. Great, neat guy. But I walked with he and Steranko to the panel room when they went to the panel. And Spurlock went ahead to, check everything out, and I'm alone with Steranko. It's mano a mano, and we're just talking about Wally Wood, and it was pretty great.
Awesome.
I have these, out-of-body experiences sometimes. I'm like, I'm just standing here with Jim Steranko.
Yeah.
So that was neat. Funny thing.
Did you have him sign a book?
I did. I got him to sign my S.H.I.E.L.D. trade paperback.
Nice.
And, but it's so funny. He asked me we had a little conversation. He asked me who, my favorite, or who I thought were the greatest artists in comics. I think he was fishing for a compliment.
Sure.
But, I mean, whatever. I didn't give it to him. I mean, I was nice to him. I wasn't, but, I was saying, oh, okay, Eisner, and he's like, whoa, Eisner didn't work in comic books. And I was like, whoa, I'm just meaning the medium itself. Because he's like, well, if you include Eisner, you got to include Milton Caniff. And I'm like, well, I love Milton Caniff, but if you want me to just do comic book artists, I'll say, Kirby, Wally Wood, Steve Ditko, Gil Kane. And then our conversation shifted. As soon as I said Gil Kane, he's like, he had to go, right then. That was about the end of our chat. But he's like, why would you put Gil Kane with Wally Wood? And I'm like, whoa. First of all, it's my list. I can include anybody. But this was a convention of some serious Gil Kane bashing. I had a conversation with the ever interesting Howard Chaykin.
Yes.
And
Howard's got a couple opinions.
Just a few. Just a few. This is a tangent our listeners will like, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And language warning and like content like warning. Like there's a thing here. Like I'm just quoting, okay?
Yeah.
So I just was talking with Jake and how about like admitting like I'm not crazy about his early work, but I look at him as one of those guys like um, Joe Kubert or Gil Kane, who was like on this upward bell curve of like the
Hmm.
great, just better and better throughout their career. Because I love what
Yeah.
Chaikin does now in like the 2000s. I'm like, oh
Hmm.
man, like Satellite Sam, great. Um, and he stopped me right there. He's like, Gil Kane was lazy. He started out as just a Gene Barry clone and blah blah blah, and just like bashing Gil Kane and talking about like how generic his cityscapes were. Like I'm like, whoa. And he told me, among other things, because
Hmm.
he's long-winded about when he's got an opinion.
Yeah.
He told me, and this is the content part, okay, guys. So he told me that Stan Lee thought Gil Kane's art was faggy looking.
I've heard that before.
I
That
did tweet about
that
it.
comment. That comment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow, that's rough stuff. And like I love Gil Kane. And what Chaikin said to me was very interesting about Gil Kane's work,
Yeah.
and I thought was cool. Gil Kane based a lot of his fight choreography and poses and figures from ballet.
Hmm.
And Chaikin was saying he and his wife were watching a movie that had, I think it was Oklahoma, and they have the dream ballet sequences in these movies, in these
Yeah.
old musicals. Well, he and his wife turned to each other when they're watching this, and they're like, "Those are Gil Kane figures." Like this was like where they realized that's where he drew that from.
Hmm.
Um, I am a big fan of Gil Kane.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't belong in the Mount Rushmore of comics, but I love his stuff, and I don't
He,
think his work is quote unquote faggy looking.
his body of work is tremendous. I mean,
Yeah.
he was constantly working, and it wasn't. Sometimes he was on one of the big books of the time, whether it was like Green Lantern or
Conan.
Spider Man. I mean, he worked for both companies, but then he also did those sci-fi projects. He did a lot of work like the
Oh,
John
Star.
Carter of Mars,
Well, he
the
also
Warlord of Mars, and
he had his own syndicated strip. What was it, Starhawks?
hmm
And I just picked up the trade paperback collecting his Black Mark material, the Sword and
nice.
Sorcery science fiction thing.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff. Um, but yeah, hey guys, maybe take it easy on Gil Kane. Um, like, because that was a lot of bagging. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want to ask Neil Adams about Gil Kane because I'm
hmm
sure Neil has something nasty to say too.
Yeah.
But because look, Neil. He,
Yeah.
uh,
Now you also met Mike Royer.
I did, and I was so thrilled. I didn't get to talk with him much,
Hmm.
but another guy full of stories. Um,
And just so, in case any of our listeners are not familiar with that name, Royer did a lot of inking for Kirby.
he is like the primary inker for Kirby in the Bronze Age. From starting like a few issues into his Fourth World stuff, and all the way up to the Captain Victory and Silver Star stuff at Pacific.
Hmm.
Royer inked most of Kirby's late period work, and I think he's Kirby's best inker, and that's my favorite period for Kirby.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so getting to meet Mike Royer was the next best thing to meeting Jack Kirby.
Nice.
And nice man. Um, uh, that was great. So I had a really great time at I Like Comic
Excellent.
Con. I hope next
I
year.
I overheard a conversation. Colin shared with me a conversation between Royer and Chaikin, and
Oh
Royer
yes, please share that
Royer
anecdote.
was like, how come I don't get invited to more of these cons? And Chaikin's like, because we all thought you were dead.
Right, nobody knows you're
You come
alive.
to a con and then you go away for 8 years and then you show up again. It's like, whoa, you're still alive?
Right. Yeah. But let me tell you, folks, he's alive and seems to be doing well. He appears every year at a con in Eugene, which is where he
Hmm.
lives. But I'm like, I don't want to drive 2 hours to meet one person.
Sure.
Even Mike Royer. But this
Hmm.
was great. I only had to drive 30 minutes.
All right.
So that was quite good. But yeah, had a wonderful time. I hope that convention continues to happen every year. How was Planet Comic Con?
I had Planet Comic Con the following week, and it was tremendous. We volunteered for the Hero Initiative there. We hit an all-time high for our show. We raised just over $5,500
Nice.
over the course of the 3 days, so we were very impressed with that. We got to host artist Ty Templeton and his wife Karen at our table all weekend.
Ty's a great guy.
So had a lot of fun conversations with Ty. I hosted a favorite Batman panel at the con,
Did Zany
and
did Zany Haney and Jim Aparo come up in this conversation?
did not. We did not
Oh,
get that.
but that's
That
the Batman
that
team
yeah,
supreme.
I know, I know. I'm right there with you.
Oh,
On the panel, we had Ty Templeton, we had writer Tom Keene and artist Clay Mann from the current Batman title. We had Brian Azzarello, and we had Andy Parks
wow.
on it, and so it really became primarily a conversation between Ty and Tom, going back and forth, and then the others would chime in from time to time. Um, One of the big discussion points was right now, Batman is engaged to Catwoman, and
Yeah.
a lot of the people on that table were not pleased with that fact that they don't think that Batman should get married to Catwoman. And Ty's like, I've already got the solution written out, because at some point the next writer will want to have to change it, and
Sure.
how do you make Batman go through a divorce or whatever?
Yeah.
It's they had that same issue over at Marvel with Spider-Man, um,
See, this is why
and
having an Earth 1 and an Earth 2 is great.
hmm
Earth 2, you could marry people off, have people die, do all that stuff, and keep everything static the way you like to have it month to month on Earth 1.
yeah. So at one point, Ty's like, I already know how the next writer's gonna fix everything, and Tom Keynes is like, really? How are they gonna do that? And Ty's like, honestly, you shoot her in the head, you dump her in the Lazarus pit, she comes back with no memories of the last year. And Tom Keene sat there for a second. He's like, all right, that's actually good. I'm going to write that one down.
Okay,
So,
spoilers for next year in Batman,
yeah,
or whatever. But
yeah.
or
But it was a great show. I got to meet Salt Neil Adams again. He was at that show. Got to meet Art Adams for the first time.
oh,
Um,
love Art
we,
Adams.
yeah, met Dan Jurgens for the first time.
Oh yeah,
A super friendly guy. Ran into Christopher Priest,
mm,
and he asked me to get a hero bucket for his table, and he raised like $250 over the course of the weekend just with his
nice.
bucket. And
Now, is
uh,
he the fellow that's writing Power Man and Iron Fist?
no, that was David Walker.
Crap. Okay, that guy's local around Portland.
Yeah,
Who is
yeah.
Christopher Priest then? Sorry.
Currently, he's writing Deathstroke
Okay.
for DC. He's done all kinds of stuff in the mid '80s. He's also worked under the name James Owsley.
Oh, he worked on the old Power Man and Iron Fist.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it is. So
He
I
did
got
the
my wires
Gotham
crossed, but in the
miniseries in
right
the
way.
1980s, and he's done work on Captain America and a bunch of other books along the way.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, it was a great show with large crowds. It was super fun.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you had a good
So,
time.
yeah,
Um, we mentioned Zany Bob Haney
yeah,
a bit ago. Quick plug for a crossover you and I are going to be participating in that'll
yes,
drop
I
in.
am super excited because this is a crossover. It's a yearly event, and I've listened to some of them in the past, and I'm glad that I'm going to get to participate this year with you.
Yeah, this is the third annual JL May event, and it's Comic Reflections, uh, and about a dozen other podcasts are coming together to cover the Silver Age event from the year 2000.
Hmm.
And you were such a super fan of that series. You have it your issues
Bound up.
bound.
Hmm.
And you and I will be covering the Brave and the Bold issue written by Bob Haney, who it must be some of his last
Yeah,
work.
I would think so.
Yeah. Um, I'm reading through the series now for the first time.
Hmm.
I never
Yeah,
I wasn't on it back then. Um, but it should be very exciting. Yeah, a
hmm,
bunch of shows from the Fire and Water Podcast
yeah,
Network, and Waiting for Doom, and Longbox Crusade, Lantern Cast, and several others will be coming together to cover that event, and it'll be releasing staggered
throughout
out
the month of
through
May.
the month of May. Should be a load of fun. And Jerry, I'm so thrilled to have you come on my
Thank
program
you.
and cover that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this project. I that was an event that I was buying as it came out, and Mark Wade kind of oversaw it, and all the tie-in books had that '60s look to them. A lot of them
Yeah,
had the checkerboard
yeah,
across the top,
yeah,
and just a lot of it was just using characters that were active during the 1960s, so or
yeah,
during the Silver Age
yeah,
period. So
yeah. The one issue I have with it is it's the post-crisis retcon for the Justice League, so no
sure,
Wonder Woman,
yeah,
which just frosts my cookies. But but uh, but yeah, I'm excited about it,
yeah,
and that should be a lot of fun. And it's so
yeah,
fun because that event came out in May of 2000, so it's perfect for
hmm,
JL May.
yeah,
Um, or just it's a little bit of synchronicity or something, you know.
hmm, yeah,
But anyway, enough about DC
yeah,
Comics.
yeah. Let's
Let's
get into Marvel.
yeah.
Um, our last episode, episode 10, came out in early part of January,
hmm
and we did get a lot of great feedback across the interwebs. The prevailing comment for most people looking at the cover to issue 10 was Bobby Drake's stripper pole.
Yeah. And you know, it crossed my mind, but like it is just weird because he just comes into that room and slides on. You're already
Yeah,
there. What?
yeah.
But
Did you put a hole in the ceiling or what?
yeah. But it's just fun.
Standard fare. You're just trying to get a
Yeah.
dramatic
Yeah.
action shot, and you don't consider
Yeah.
the 10 seconds before or after the picture.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes a lot of. I mean, that was the splash panel in the first issue of
Hmm.
X-Men, and I think that sometimes a lot of Kirby's everything, but like Kirby's composition of a scene sometimes is very dreamlike, like watching Italian movies. You know, like it doesn't necessarily all need to make sense. It just got to look cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um, some other comments that we got. Bill Schmidt, who's a listener to my podcast, I hadn't mentioned it before, but I've been listening to all the episodes. I don't have any criticism. I enjoy the show. Keep up the good work. In my boat, no criticism is equal to a positive review.
right. Well, that
So,
Bill Schmidt, he's easy to please. Uh,
Jim Alder said, I used to love these things. Um, David Santiago shared a photo comment where he posted the Marvel Tales annual cover #1, saying that the montage cover reminded him of that.
oh yes.
Um, Wisp Brian, loved Marvel Saga. I remember getting issue #3 when I was 6 or 7 years old and being fascinated by the classic cover gallery in the back and the appearance of the Kirby Ayers Hulk, just captivating. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
And as always, please leave us comments on our Facebook page or on Twitter, wherever you find the show. You can even post comments back to the Comic Reflections thread or the Worst Comic Podcast Ever thread. Just let us know if you're listening. We'd love to get more comments like that.
Yeah. And we are working on getting Fingeroth and Peter Sanderson on the program,
Hmm.
probably separately, but just for logistics reasons. But
Yeah,
they reached out to us in a comment thread, and we want to talk to them and give that conversation to you, the listener.
absolutely.
But yeah, on to our issue here. The Marvel Saga #11 was cover dated October of 1986 but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it went on sale July 8th of 1986. And we've got a nice cover from Keith Pollard and Al Williamson. I love that as a pairing. Pollard, Bronze
Yeah.
Age classic. Al Williamson, all-time classic. You know.
It it is a very strong cover. Um, once again, the front cover is obviously going to feature the X-Men prominently because that's what was selling. And
Hmm.
we don't keep bringing that up to bag on the X-Men or anything. It's just it's more evident now looking at this as a collected series versus if I was just buying it month to month at the newsstand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think wherever possible, they're like, let put the X-Men on the cover, front and center.
Hmm.
And they're like pushing the X Factor. Like this was
Yeah.
the time when the X-Men had three ongoing titles of new material, not to
Hmm.
mention classic X-Men, the reprint book.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like any more than that, the franchise becomes unwieldy, as it
Hmm.
did.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, but
Yeah.
can you imagine the
Um,
'80s being like, "Oh, three X-Men books? This is crazy,"
yeah.
And now there's like a dozen, I'm sure.
Easily.
And
Uh, the other part of the cover features the Molecule Man, which
yeah,
at first I was a little surprised to see this, but then I'm also thinking this
Secret
is
Wars.
soon after Secret Wars, and he had a prominent role in that series. And
Yeah,
um, I always liked the Molecule Man. We'll talk about him later this issue. On the back cover, because it's a wraparound cover,
yeah,
we see the Hulk meeting Namor for the first time. We see Ant-Man becoming Giant Man, and we see Iron Man going from the clunky gray armor to um, what was first a golden armor, and then moved over to the traditional red and gold armor.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I dig. Yes, I dig it.
all right.
It's fun.
Uh, well, let's get started here. We get
Oh,
a
I should
new,
mention.
yeah.
I always forget. Want to give credit. The Marvel Saga, edited by Danny Fingeroth and
Hmm.
researched, compiled, and written by Peter Sanderson.
Absolutely. And we
Okay.
actually get a letters column in this issue.
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought it's a nice addition.
A
The
12
only
issues
downside is
in.
that they need more letters. They needed more feedback. Um, that they only had like a partial page to do to dedicate for letters.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's so many credits to be given for all the various reused panels and things that, yeah, it takes up
Hmm.
a lot of that room.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I would be happy with a couple of pages. I know everything. If you multiply, add a page, you have to add 3 pages for the
Hmm.
4 color process because the newsprint has to be folded 4 times
Yeah.
or folded twice.
Hmm.
So to add 1 page, you have to have fill another 3, and it's an ad free book. But I
Yeah.
mean, we can have more ads, and it's not like Sanderson is like hurting for page count. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he probably could use another couple pages to breathe here.
Hmm.
So uh,
Yeah.
the cake is baked. But we do have so book 11, Days of Power, has a 2 panel splash of new art from
Hmm.
Keith Pollard and Klaus Janson, one of the current original X-Men as X Factor, and then a panel, of course, in the X-Men in their 1963 version.
Very much so, and it's rather striking. I mean, obviously the art team did both, but at they made X Factor really look like the original X Men. Beast had gone back to a more human form during that run.
Yeah, for a
Um,
time, yeah.
yeah, this was before Angel lost his wings and then became Archangel.
It's before
Uh,
Iceman had to have that belt or whatever that he had for a while.
hmm So there's a lot of striking similarities between the two lineups of the same figures, even though there's 20 some years difference between when the bottom set of characters appeared and the current set of characters shown above. So
Yeah.
Um, well, we get into the we lead off with the Etzman in this volume, and when we left off last issue, we just saw the first appearance of Magneto,
Yeah.
um, and he is uh, starting his attempts to take over the world because obviously mutants were born to rule the earth and to enslave mankind, and that the only safe earth is a earth led by the mutants. So he is destroying uh, military weapons, trying to decimate the military. He tells the earth to surrender, and of course, over at the Xavier School, they're not going to buy into that. They know that this is why they were put together, is to stop threats like Magneto.
Yeah.
So Xavier gives them the pep talk, and um, the team heads out to stop Magneto. And I love, we saw this on the classic cover to X-Men #1. At this time, you in order to show Magneto's magnetic powers, you have the little waves of energy creating like the magnetic force field.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, you probably wouldn't see it in real life, but I'm glad you put it into the comics like that to kind of visualize it for the reader.
Yeah, and I think Kirby's the perfect guy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. But yeah, you'll notice a lot of other Magneto appearances, you don't really see the stuff. You just see maybe energy around
quickly.
a thing he's lifting or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, even though we've seen the origins of the X-Men in prior issues of Marvel Saga, this really is the first time that we're seeing the X-Men in battle doing things with their powers. So, you know, in this one panel, we see Cyclops use his force beams at maximum power.
Right.
But he can only maintain this pressure for a few seconds. And it dents the force field, but it doesn't really make it go away. And we see the team attacking Magneto, and Magneto starts just throwing anything that's magnetic or metallic, excuse me.
Yeah.
Throwing anything metallic at the team. He buries the Angel under all kinds of debris and equipment. Cyclops frees them out. Magneto tries to attack Iceman, and this is back when he's in the snowman phase of his character, with a burning tank of fuel, but Iceman's able to smother it out. And it, again, with the magnetic force field, the team is constantly attacking, and for as powerful as Magneto has become, the X-Men on their first mission seem to be making Magneto struggle. I mean,
yeah,
he wasn't the powerful figure that we now know.
And it's weird because, you know, he's a grown man. He's had these powers for years.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't seem to be, he seems to be still using it for very rudimentary ways. And they're still exploring the possibilities of this character.
Sure.
You know,
they do convince Magneto to take off, and you know that he's going to be back another day to try once again to take over the world, and the X-Men are going to be there to stop him.
Yeah. So that's fun. And it's what I like is the U.S. military like the X-Men and thank them and everything.
Yeah.
We'll see. See how long that lasts.
Yeah, well, in the early days of the X-Men, they actually had a liaison with the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
Fred something. It'll come to me
later. It escapes me. This character has languished in obscurity.
Yeah, but over like the first year or so of the X-Men book, he appeared quite often, and the government would often reach out to Xavier to ask for help from the X-Men. And
you know what? I bet I know I have that issue with the Vanisher, you know, #2, close at hand. I bet he's in that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's it for the X-Men for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get back to him.
We'll cut over to the billionaire playboy Anthony Stark. who's just having a fun day at the races, except he has a crash, and
Yeah.
he's saved by uh, ex-boxer Happy Hogan, uh, who becomes his man Friday and pal.
It's funny. I had forgotten that this was how the two met early on, but I like that they were able to incorporate parts of this into the Iron Man 2 movie.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah,
It's like, um, you know, a part of the success of this Marvel cinematic universe is how well they have mined the little details from the comics
yeah,
to
and
make
it's
for a more fulfilling storyline.
they've made plenty of changes because you got it for movies.
Sure.
But what they've done is taken those little nuggets and made it feel authentic.
Hmm.
And that's how I feel like you can make the changes, but as long as these characters in this story feels like those characters, it's gold. And it's the Superman 1 and 2 model.
Yeah.
Those movies, yeah, there's drastic differences from the comic books, but he feels like Superman. And
Hmm.
those characters, it everything feels genuine.
Yeah.
And that's I feel like the Marvel movies for the most part um, work off that model.
Hmm.
And I wish everybody did that because like
Yeah.
those are the two best superhero movies ever.
Hmm. They
um,
are right up there.
yeah, but anywho, but yeah, and then of course Happy meets Tony's secretary Pepper Potts, and she's crazy about Tony. But years later, of course, she and Happy will be
Hmm.
married for a time.
Yeah.
Um,
And once again, Stanley using the alliterative names, Happy Hogan, Pepper Potts.
well, I mean, it helps for the memory.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy, and for the reader, it's easy to remember. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, he has to. Tony has to rescue Happy and Pepper as they are endangered from uh, by Jack Frost, who later changes his name to Blizzard,
Hmm.
and who was really a minor villain. Like, but he'd show up in things like Spidey Super Stories,
Yeah.
like let's drag this
Marvel
guy
Team
up.
Up or Marvel 2-in-1, books
Yeah,
like that.
because he has a cool look, but he's
Hmm.
just not. He's good for like you know a one-off issue.
Yeah.
You don't have a 6-issue arc about the Blizzard.
Hmm.
You know,
He's not headlining his own title at any time soon.
no. But yeah, that guy he comes back. He comes back. So we'll cut over to the Mighty Thor for now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you may have heard of him. And he's got quite a dilemma because he's in his alter ego, Dr. Donald Blake, is in love with his nurse, but he's
Yeah.
so lame he can't
Hmm.
tell her that he's Thor, even
Yeah.
though there's no
Is
reason not to tell her.
is this the first time we're meeting Jane Foster?
Uh,
I don't recall her in prior.
I, it's been a bit. I don't remember. I'm
Yeah.
sure that she's shown up already because I think she was in the Kirby introduction of Thor and stories that we've already covered, and then this is clearly
Yeah.
Don Heck art.
Could be. I'm going to look it up while you keep telling us about Thor here.
Okay, so Odin forbids Thor to marry a mortal, and Thor is sad. Even yeah, Odin or Thor petitions Odin like, "Can I marry this chick? I love her."
Yeah.
And
Do you mind if I marry an Earthling? I know it's kind of below us as Guardians. Never mind whatever you've done in your past, Dad.
right. Well, to be fair, I think his dalliances have been with goddesses,
Mhm.
which whatever. But yeah, Odin says no, and Thor be sad, and then he has to go take out his frustration on the Lava Men, which is cool. Kicks the crap out of Molto, and and then stuff. Um,
And again, the Lava Men, that's a great throwback to the the monster concept books.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, again, he's a super heroic figure, but I don't know that we're viewing Thor as a superhero yet,
right.
if
He's
that
just
made sense.
I get it because he's really a character out of mythology, and how many stories from mythology were about fighting supervillains? Zero. They're always
Hmm.
about fighting some other mythical strong person or monsters. You know, so yeah, having a lava man is kind of like, what is this, the 12 labors of Hercules? You know,
Hmm.
okay. I realized there was no lava man in that, but it rings to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so the Fantastic Four travel back in time via Doctor Doom's time platform and encounter Rama Tut, who is such a headache of a villain.
This always gives me headaches. And they've only made his history and timeline more convoluted over the years.
Well, and because it has to do with divergent timelines and time travel and everything, there are he's of the Ramatut is of the line of Doctor Doom, but in various incarnations he is the Scarlet Centurion who battles the Squadron Supreme. He's Kang the Conqueror and Immortus.
Yeah.
Um, and all of those characters are cool and interesting, and the connection to Doctor Doom and also to the Richards family
Yeah.
is both cool, but like, oh god, what a headache. I mean,
You
it's like trying to explain the Legion of Superheroes continuity to somebody.
you need a a large wall-sized diagram to show
Yeah,
all the interactions between the timelines of these characters. And there was a stretch there in the 70s when Steve Englehart was writing the Avengers where he was
I thought
using
Englehart
a
wrote the
lot of these.
Avengers in the 80s. Oh no, that's Roger Stern. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah,
Okay,
Steve Englehart. It was like 120 through like 140, and
yeah,
this was when Mantis was part of the group, and you had the Vision and Scarlet Witch and Mantis love triangle, and then
yeah.
we had a lot of time traveling, jumping between the different timelines, and Mortis and Kane. It just those comics always felt like a lot of work to read, and comics shouldn't feel like work to read.
Right. Um, yes. I'm thinking of a very specific comic series that is such a chore to read.
Yeah.
The acronym version of the Legion.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it's just like what a drag that comic is.
Yeah.
But but uh but yeah, keeping track of the Ramatut, Kang, and Mortis stuff, it's like it's like trying to figure out who the Zodiac killer is. Like,
Hmm.
like good grief, we can't do it, man.
Yeah.
Um, but aside from that, Thor fights Cobra, who is why is this guy a Thor villain?
I don't. I. There's no logical reason for it. I mean,
Because he's like a '60s Batman villain, you know?
yeah. Power wise, there's no comparison between Cobra and Thor. I really like when Cobra teams up with Mr. Hyde, and it makes for an interesting dynamic
I do
for
like
those
that,
two to work together. Um,
but I
but
like Cobra and Hyde against Daredevil
yeah, or
because they're
Spider
really a
Man.
challenge for him.
Yeah, yeah. This battle should be done in 3 panels. It should not take more than an issue.
I think you're being very generous. Um, I remember reading early '90s Captain America. I think Ron Lim was the artist, and Cap is fighting the Serpent Society. He's kicked their asses, and he's got Cobra all trussed up, and Cap's wanting information out of him. And he's like, Thor, I could get Thor over here. Like, he's like, I'll tell you everything. Because he's scared to death of Thor, which, yeah,
Yeah.
because he's kicked the crap out of you forever.
Hmm.
But yeah,
All right. Well, turning the page here, we see an image from a Human Torch story in Strange Tales,
yeah,
where he is,
one of the ones of those that are actually good.
yeah, where he is fighting Captain America. Now, this is news to everyone because Captain America hasn't been seen since World War II, and
Well, since the
uh,
50s.
well,
Remember Captain
yes,
America Commie Crusher? Come
yeah.
on.
He's coming along later.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
coming
yeah.
along later.
That's
Um, it turns out this is actually um, an old foe of Johnny's known as the Acrobat, who's wearing a Captain America costume as they're
right.
doing battle. In all actuality, Stan Lee was kind of using it as a test case to see if there was any interest in bringing Captain America back as some kind of feature in the Marvel comics.
Yeah. And I'm glad this story happened because it we're not too far from Avengers 4,
Yeah.
which is one of the greatest comic books of all time.
Hmm.
Its
Definitely.
cover is just awesome.
Yeah.
You got
Um,
so
because at this point, the three main characters from Marvel's Golden Age were Human Torch, Submariner, and Captain America.
yeah, and we've
And
revived.
you've already got two of them back.
Yeah,
It made sense to try to say, is if we were to bring Captain America back, would that sell?
right.
So rather than just going ahead and give him his own title or feature to start off right away, let's try working him into something that's already ongoing. So
Yeah.
we try Strange Tales where he can fight Human Torch, and it harkens back to a lot of those stories from the 1940s. And,
Yeah.
Kirby, I'm sure, had fun putting this issue together. And
Oh yeah.
uh,
Um,
so,
it's interesting to note. I don't think Kirby drew the torch or Namor back in the 40s.
you're probably right.
Yeah. And I have to say, as I said it before, I say it again, I like Jim Hammond so much more than Johnny Storm
Hmm.
because I just don't like Johnny. But yeah. Um,
So we jump back over to the X-Men, and we're getting to this point here in Marvel Saga, and we're going to see this a lot going forward, where because there's more books and more events going on, we're going to get a lot of these really quick look-ins at what's going on in a particular title, and then we jump over to the next one. So with right now, we've got a quick look in at the X-Men on their second adventure, where they are fighting the Vanisher, who is trying to steal America's defense plans.
yeah.
Uh,
Nice
Back
vague
when
plan.
everything was still printed out on paper.
Right. Right. And the Vanisher has teleporting powers, which is
Hmm.
neat. Um, I have a soft spot for this character, even though for the most part he's not been used much.
Yeah, yeah,
They did bring him back for a little while during the Fallen Angels series in the
yep,
'80s, which is mentioned here.
yeah.
Um,
And that's probably why they included this particular reference to the Vanisher, and this
right. I don't think
is to
like
help promote that title.
I don't think villains like Mesmero or the Locust get anything in the Marvel Saga.
No,
Although they don't come on for a little later anyway.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yeah.
is the Vanisher? I think he isn't he dead?
I seem to recall that because wasn't he in the Book of the Dead when they did the Ohamu special
Probably. I
edition?
never read Fallen Angels. Angels. Maybe he dies in that.
Yeah, we'd have to look that up.
Okay.
So,
Sorry,
well, moving
folks. We
on.
don't know everything.
Yeah, moving on. We check in on Henry Pym and
Hmm.
Janet Van Dyne, also known as Ant-Man and the Wasp, and uh, he has been making some changes. He has discovered that in addition to shrinking, he can enlarge himself, and so now he has created or become Giant Man, and it totally puts a different spin on their adventures.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
He's constantly growing large, he's constantly growing small, and it kind of diversifies the type of stories that they can tell with those characters.
Definitely.
Um,
Being able to get small can be useful, but being able to
yeah.
be giant in the blockbuster battles that Marvel likes to throw
Hmm.
out there, I think that's you've got more. You can get more play, and maybe
Yeah.
it's easier to write those stories.
Yeah. And we'll see as we get into the Avengers stories, when you're in a lineup consisting of Hulk and Thor and Iron Man, being Ant Man makes you feel pretty insignificant.
Right.
You want to become Giant Man just so you can kind of try to match up with those other
Yeah.
personalities in the group.
Yeah.
So, um,
Unfortunately, Hank Pym can't really catch a break because as Ant Man, he's like, oh, he's the tiny guy. But as
yeah,
Giant Man, he's the also ran because everyone else on the team, during that period is a powerhouse.
yeah,
It's like, well, what do we need you for? you know?
yeah. And the other thing that has always bothered me about Hank Pym as Giant Man or Goliath, um, is they always make a big to do that the longer he's in this giant form, the more it tires him out. Yet every time they're just hanging out around Avengers Mansion, he is in giant size form.
Right,
If
because,
you're just hanging out at the mansion, you're going to be your normal size to
yeah,
conserve your energy and
yeah.
so you can walk through the house normally. You don't need to be 12 feet tall walking around the mansion.
Here's the thing. And they do this with the Fantastic Four, too.
Hmm.
With Giant Man, like, if you can draw a guy giant, don't you
You
want to
draw
draw a
it.
giant guy?
Yeah.
And it's like and for somebody, like maybe they pick up Avengers for the first time. Oh, Giant Man. Oh, he's huge. Okay, because if a
Yeah.
guy's like just regular size and they call him Giant Man, huh? You know,
Yeah.
and the same with the Human Torch. Why is he flamed on indoors?
Hmm.
Like, and they show so much of that, at least in the early FF issues.
But in those early FF issues, everything was covered with asbestos, so it was good. It was
Yeah,
okay.
no problems there. Yeah. uh,
Um, so we see the whole process as to how Ant Man became Giant Man. I love that in his lab he's got a wall marked off with a height chart, so you can
yeah.
see him go from 6 feet to 12 feet tall.
Now, 12 feet is the comfortable height to to grow to. He can get bigger, but this is the
Yeah,
one he can manage
it's
without
yeah.
collapsing under his own weight or whatever.
Hmm. Um, so then we're going to jump over into
The Hulk.
uh, the Avengers.
Well,
Well, it's the this is going to be coincide with Avengers number 2,
yeah,
where they battle the Space Phantom. And the Space Phantom, basically, he mimics a person, and when he's mimicking them, they get sent off to limbo.
yeah,
And so, he starts out by mimicking the Hulk, and of course, that leads into a battle between Hulk and Iron Man. Um, and when they meet up again, it's the real Hulk, and Iron Man's like, "What were you doing?" And Hulk's like, "Didn't do a thing, not me," you know.
yeah. Do you think which limbo do you think this is? The limbo that the dire wraiths get banished to, or the limbo with like Sim and Nastir and Belasco?
Um, I think it might be the third limbo, and it's the same limbo that Captain Marvel and Rick Jones would interchange between with the Negabons.
I thought that he went to the negative zone. Was it limbo?
Maybe it was Negative Zone. Maybe
I
I'm
mean,
off
I
on
could
that.
be full of crap, but I could have swore I read a story where Rick is in the negative zone and he sees Annihilus.
You're probably right. Now that I think about it.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's definitely got me wondering now. I'm gonna have to
Hmm.
go back and look at that.
Can we get an answer, listeners?
We might just have to start doing another podcast just answering all the questions we raised during our own
We
show.
need somebody to no prize this. Like,
Yeah.
which limbo is it?
Yeah.
I mean, because can the Space Phantom have his own limbo?
This is why we need to talk to Peter Sanderson and Danny Fingeroff.
Yes.
um, so the Avengers end up defeating the Space Phantom, but it's created a rift within the team that the Hulk does not like, that the team apparently doesn't trust him, that they were so quick to blame him for all this stuff. And so at the end of issue 2 of the Avengers, the Hulk quits.
Yeah.
And it's one of the shortest memberships of any character in any group.
Yeah, because when they're fighting who they perceive as the Hulk, he was watching from. I guess he could see it all in limbo,
Yeah.
which is kind of neat. Like the Phantom Zone's like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, "You guys hate me. You don't trust me. Like, screw you. I'm out of here."
Yeah. I'm a charter member. I should get a little more respect than this. So.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted the Hulk around so that they could keep an eye on him, not because they wanted him as a friend.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm out of here."
I'm done.
Yep. And of course, the Hulk will return to cause problems pretty soon and pretty frequently.
Yeah.
I love how
Hulk. Probably by the end of this particular issue.
Yeah. Hulk and Namor at this time, I love their statuses as these like untrustworthy anti-heroes. Like they'll do good, but they'll also kick an ass or two.
Yeah.
And they don't care whose it is, you know.
And at this time, I think this is the period where the Hulk doesn't have an ongoing feature.
Right. He is just the celebrated guest star.
Yeah. He had his 6-issue run initially. That got canceled.
He's not in Tales to Astonish yet, is he?
Yeah. No. So he had appeared in FF. He had joined the Avengers, and now he's out of there, and he kind of becomes a rogue character for a little bit till he gets his own feature again.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, what if, like, Hulk and Namor had stayed villains?
I'd kind of like that.
I wish Magneto had stayed a villain. Like, those guys plus Doctor Doom and the Red Skull, man, that's the greatest cast of villains ever.
Yeah.
You know?
When they had Magneto reform in the mid '80s and take over the Xavier School, it really felt like he had been neutered.
Yeah, and the character just cannot come back from that. He's had villainous turns since then, but his default is coming back to the X-Men.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Magneto's up to right now, but I mean, it's like, I think heroing up Loki's popularity in the Marvel movies has neutered him as a villain in the comics. I mean, they've made him kind of more of a good guy now anyway.
Yeah.
It's just like, don't let the cinematic movies, the cinematic universe's villain problem become the comic book's villain problem. Come on, guys.
You can tell separate stories.
Yeah.
You should tell separate stories.
Right? I mean, they are, but they're trying to more to make the comics look and feel like the movies, as if that'll help comics in this dying industry, sell better. But anyway, back to the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
The FF are meeting the Watcher again. I think the first time
he only shows up when there's something big is going to happen.
Yeah, he's totally breaking his vow of non-interference by giving them information. And
like his second or third appearance too, and it's like, all right, screw the vows.
He's like he's like James Kirk in the Prime Directive. Just screw it, But not only tells him about a thing and points him in the right direction.
Yeah.
So he summons him to the moon, tells him about the Molecule Man. This guy has a nuclear accident. He's a lab tech. And he gets these molecule affecting powers. Which is an incredible power. He can basically rearrange all matter.
Yes.
And he has kind of a mental block. He thinks he has to use his wand to project his power, and he thinks that he can't use it on organic matter.
Yes.
Both things are untrue.
Yeah.
But for the sake of right now, it's important.
Yeah. it's amazing that he, on face value, he should be the most powerful villain of all time.
I mean, he
I
does
mean,
try to take over the world immediately.
yeah,
Uh,
but the fact that he knows so little about his powers, that he's got these almost self-imposed limits that he's put on himself, that it wasn't until a good 20 years later that you begin to realize there is so much more that this character could do than what we've used him for so far.
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. I'm not. Molecule Man is not a character that I have. I don't like hate him, but I don't have an especial fondness for.
Hmm.
He's just kind of there.
I like him just because he was featured in one of the first Fantastic Four comics that I read. It was like 187, 188.
Oh, that '70s run. Is that the building, the one where he turns the buildings into these giant
Yes,
beings? And yeah, yeah, I read
yeah,
that one too. Uh,
yeah.
and no,
So that for that reason, I've got that fondness towards him.
yeah,
But even at that point, he was still a relatively tame character.
yeah. He's got this great set of powers, but as a character, his motivations and stuff aren't that interesting. I guess
Hmm.
it's like the Fantastic Four's Rogues Gallery is fantastic. You know,
Yeah,
I love the Red Ghost and the Super Apes and Doom and Namor and Galactus and even the Puppet Master and um, the Mad Thinker and the Awesome Android. Like I think all of those are classic villains, and I love seeing them.
yeah,
But for some reason, I always kind of like forget about the Molecule Man.
yeah. He's on that easily forgettable list. Uh, what I found interesting, and whether this was shooters thinking ahead or accidental inclusion, the fact that he was included in the Secret Wars event, and then they've gone back and they've tied in Molecule Man's creation to the moment when
The
the
Beyonder,
Beyonder was created.
or to the moment when the Beyonder discovered our universe.
Okay, yeah,
In the accident that gave the Molecule Man his powers, a pinhole into the Beyonder's dimension was
sure,
opened, and that's kind of the beginning of that.
yeah,
And I think that was
uh,
revealed early on in Secret Wars 2.
yeah. But just when you look at like that Secret Wars lineup, and you're looking at all the heroes that are gathered, and then all the villains that were gathered, I think everyone was collectively, why is Molecule Man here? You know,
Yeah, and
because he's always been that lame villain. I mean, to me, having the Wrecking Crew on the Beyonder world made more sense than having Molecule Man.
I think the Wrecking Crew was just like, okay, here's a bunch of guys that have like super strength, and we just throw them in instead of really having. Because if you have like all of Marvel's great villains, you know, the Mandarin and Loki and the Red Skull and Doctor Doom are not going to get along.
Yeah, but
And
and I'm just even thinking, because the whole premise was based upon trying to sell a toy line.
yeah,
Molecule Man as a figure has got to be the most boring action figure ever created.
yeah.
I mean, why would you want to buy a Molecule Man figure?
Has there even ever been one?
I'm sure they've probably done one in the Marvel Legends line by now,
Yeah.
somewhere along the line. But
But I'm like, that's a character that I know I have never seen, and there's
yeah,
some obscure characters that have gotten toys.
hmm
Uh,
and I mean that was the whole premise. So you know, having the Wrecking Crew, where you got the guy with the wrecking ball and the wrecker with the crowbar. I mean, all right, those are like weapons that you can include with the action figures.
and they didn't
Having those
make those
characters,
toys. They
yeah,
didn't make
having
them.
those characters involved made sense,
Yeah.
knowing the premise for why the series was even created. I just having Molecule Man included really never made any sense with that Secret Wars series.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's one of the drawbacks. Um, uh, but that is a fun book.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. And I have a fondness for it. I do.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I we several years ago we had the chance to interview or do a panel with Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, and
oh
John
yes,
Beatty talking about Secret Wars, and we managed to continue that conversation with Shooter at the hotel bar that night, and
nice.
had a lot of good stories there. But that's for another podcast.
Yes. But yeah, so the Fantastic Four might fight the Molecule Man, and they beat him. Although his power is awesome, they he gets some weird feedback that sucks him into another. The Watcher sweeps him into a sphere of glowing energy and takes him to another dimension. So the FF
Yeah,
don't even beat him; they just hold him off.
yeah.
So the
So
Watcher.
much for that non-interference.
Well, and here's the thing: why did the Watcher even call the Fantastic Four for any of it if he was just going to send him to another
Yeah.
dimension? They created a villain, wrote
Mm-hmm.
themselves into a corner, and used a Deus Ex Machina that essentially made the heroes of the book needless.
Yeah.
I talk about stories like, hey, what if Superman just showed up in a Batman book and made Batman just like look like nothing, like just
Yeah.
like cleaned up Gotham and like made sure everybody in Arkham stayed there forever, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to switch over and look at Iron Man again,
Yeah.
and we are meeting what probably has to be the lamest Iron Man villain of all time, Mr. Doll, who basically is a ripoff of the Puppet Master from the Fantastic Four comics.
But does Mr. Doll like create animated anything? What does he even do? He just has voodoo dolls?
Basically, he creates figurines and of people, and he can use them to control those people.
Yeah, because I know he hurts Iron Man,
Yeah,
but
and Iron Man is stuck in this suit, um, and he can't get out of it to stop Mr. Doll, and this encourages him that maybe now he needs to reinvent the suit, come up with something better.
right.
So he goes back to the lab. Of course, he's putting it all together, and he comes up with a more streamlined suit. The original one was big and bulky and
Yeah.
looked like you could get a couple of people in the suit at any given time. um, this new suit is more form fitting, and initially it is all gold, which is how we get the nickname the Golden Avenger associated with
Well, I
him.
remember that he had painted over the gray stuff and had the gold for a while in the big bulky armor.
Okay,
This is the red and yellow.
okay, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
I don't want to be that guy, but
No, no, keep me honest, definitely.
okay.
I,
Well, I
and
think you're being honest, Jerry. I just
no,
think.
well, I mean, in all fairness, so many of these stories I've only read in the essentials, so everything's black and white.
All right. Okay,
You know,
Steve Ditko. Uh, but uh, uh,
so anyway, Iron Man switches to the new armor. He does manage to defeat Mr. Doll. I don't know if Mr. Doll is seen again. I don't ever recall him being in comics again. But
yeah, there's a lot of these early Marvel villains that are like once and never again, and thank you.
thanks. Yes. Yes.
Although there's a Giant Man villain that I thought was so cool, like I just based on the cover, and I know he's just a one-off villain, is the Living Eraser.
Yes.
I thought he just looked awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
another one.
All right. So now we're going to touch over on Spider-Man, who's been
Yeah,
fighting the Vulture, and I love that they did this in Marvel Saga, where we see an interaction between Peter Parker and Betty Brant.
yeah,
Because Betty was Spider-Man's first love.
Yep.
in the early issues of the Lee Ditko years. Betty was J. Jonah Jameson's secretary, and um, at one point early on, in one of his early adventures, Spider-Man has to save Betty's brother, who's run into trouble with the enforcers, if I recall correctly.
Probably.
Um,
Wait, who gets in trouble with the enforcers?
Betty's brother.
She gets in trouble with Doc Ock, or he
Okay.
gets in trouble with Doc Ock. I
Okay.
mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but it might be. It could be both.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll find out. Uh, but we just see Peter being Peter and having a dialogue uh, moment with Betty Brant, and so many times, especially in this particular comic itself, we don't get to see these little character moments. Marvel Saga so many times is focusing on the battles between the big characters, and we don't get to see enough of the little moments. And it's these little moments that I think made Marvel Comics what they were in the 60s.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yes, it's a standout kind of thing. I love DC, but a lot of the character relationships get established, and then they get remain static and kind of like work through the same uh, stuff over and
Story
over.
beats over and over.
Yes, and thank you. And Marvel, it's at least it's building these relationships and advancing them up
Yes.
to a point, which a lot of readers responded to. I mean, like
Yeah.
like unfortunately, it gave rise to Marvel zombies. People who like crap on any company that isn't Marvel, and I think that's really boring
Yeah.
uh, to read only Marvel comics. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely one of the standout things. So let's head over to Fantastic Four territory,
Yes.
where they do battle. Well, they encounter this hooded demagogue, as it's described here, the Hate Monger, and he's a real jerk off. He's wears a hood. Obviously, it's a metaphor for the Klan
Hmm.
and stuff. Uh,
There are so many similarities between this issue and at times what we see in today's world.
yeah, I mean,
And
yeah.
it's impossible. You would think that the rise of someone like the hate monger could only happen in comics, but no,
But
we're
day
seeing
and
some
age,
real life events.
in
And
this day and age, you can become president of the United States. Um, but um, uh, but the hate
and,
monger, he's preaching hatred to a crowd, but he also has the H ray, which he just can use on people and make them hate.
yeah, let's get that hate level up to an all new high.
Yeah.
So,
Um.
um,
So
and
the Fantastic Four are bickering.
yeah, imagine that.
They meet Nick Fury, Colonel Nick Fury, still with two eyes.
Yeah.
Of course, you'll remember him as leader of the Howling Commandos from WW2. Um, but is he part of? He's part of Shield, I guess now.
Well, I think this is around the time when they first introduced Shield as a concept
Yeah.
within the pages of FF.
Apparently, Reed and Fury knew each other in the war.
Yes, there
Uh,
was a early issue in the Sergeant Fury series where uh, the Howling Commandos encounter Reed Richards in Europe.
hmm,
That he's working for.
the Nazis? No.
No, he's
The
he's
Allies.
he's like part of the French Resistance or something. That he's
Okay.
working with the Resistance
Yeah.
group.
And Ben fought in World War II also.
Yes.
Um, the
It
problem
works.
is,
It works at 61 and 62. Anything after like 1970, and the timeline just falls apart.
yeah, and that's the problem. That's where Marvel Comics kind of falls apart. DC having not having sent its heroes to World War II, um, was a really smart move. Even though I probably didn't plan it that so much that way.
Yeah,
But DC fell apart too because they felt they had to do Crisis, and then everything is a reboot every 5 to 10 years.
yeah,
Marvel's never done a reboot. They just kind of scrunch up that the sliding time scale.
yeah.
Um,
Other than we might see something come this May with the reports coming out. So
what from?
Marvel.
Oh, you mean another line wide reboot that's it's never going to be the same again, even though it's
Yeah,
just like Marvel now. It's just like Marvel, whatever, like a couple years
yeah.
ago.
I New editor in chief has to make his new direction on the titles.
I want somebody with the balls to say, let's not do that. Let's just
I
put out books
Yeah,
and make
and
them good.
I think that's what they're getting to. Um, from the initial reports, they are streaming down the lines. Um, you won't have 15 Avengers books. You'll have one Avengers book.
See,
Um,
that's good. Because if there's one
yeah,
Avengers book, hey, okay, I can keep track of the Avengers by reading one book.
exactly.
Um,
So and I think they're trying to get back to the traditional characters that we see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to some degree. That
right,
the classic takes on the characters. Case in point, Thor Odin's son will become Thor again
right,
versus Jane Foster.
right. I mean, like, isn't
Um,
she dead from cancer yet? It's
that's coming
coming.
up next month.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Um,
I mean, I'm
you
not like
know,
wishing that, but I'm like,
yeah,
they've been milking that for a while. Like,
yeah,
but modern superhero comic books are a mess.
yeah.
1986 is the perfect jumping off point. It's true. I mean, I'm not saying that there are not good comics now and
Sure.
since that point, but I don't think they were ever better before then. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like before, up to the Secret Wars and Crisis on Infinite Earths, perfect time to just start collecting the stuff that came before and forget about what's coming out now.
yeah,
Um, uh, because then everything continuity wise you can still make sense of.
sure.
Um, and timeline wise. But
Yeah,
but anyway, back to the hate monger and stuff.
yeah.
Um,
Still making people mad.
yeah, he's a jerk. So the Fantastic Four and Nick Fury, without an eye patch, fight him and stuff, and it turns out he's Hitler. Big shocker. Um, but it gets even weirder because Arnim Zola, the man with the TV screen face
Hmm.
and the camcorder head, um, um, cloned Hitler and transferred his consciousness into the hate monger's body. Now I know there's an issue of supervillain team up where it's the Red Skull, Zola, and the hate monger.
Hmm.
Get all your Nazis together. They had. I don't think the second Zemo was introduced yet. Otherwise, it'd be like, oh man,
Yeah. It.
the Nazi patrol. Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da. Yeah.
Again, this is an era where so many of the creators at Marvel had spent time in the military during World War II.
Yeah.
And so, even though he wasn't around, Hitler is still an easy villain to use in comics.
Yeah. I mean, in the Cold War they had the commies, but it's just not the same stuff. Like
Hmm.
it's more complicated. Even if you hate commies, it's not as good as an all-American as hating Nazis.
Yeah.
And I think in the 1960s, with the civil rights movement and the many people who were against it,
Hmm.
um, the specter of Adolf Hitler was alive and well. And
Yeah.
so having the hate monger show up at this time, uh, it's there's a resonance. It's powerful.
Hmm.
It's ballsier than anything DC was doing at the time. And
Yeah.
I love DC, but they weren't gonna have a villain turn out to be Hitler. And
Hmm.
DC is like 90% Jewish guys, you
Yeah.
know. So, but yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Uh, so stuff. So, but hey, the Angel fights Iron Man
Yes.
in one panel of this book because the Angel went crazy or something because of comic book reasons, but then he was okay.
And was this in an issue of Iron Man, or was this in one of those like amazing adventure stories of the Angel later on?
You know, those stories have never been reprinted. I've read a couple of them.
Yeah.
Jerry Siegel wrote them, uh, which is weird, but I don't know. This looks like a reprinted panel from that, so I want to say it's not from Amazing Adventures.
Okay.
Um, I
I'm just
I would
looking through
imagine
here.
that it's probably in an Iron Man issue,
All right.
but I don't know. You've read the Essential Iron Man volumes, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
haven't. So I mean,
I'm pretty sure it's Tales of Suspense, but
okay.
I'm gonna give it a quick look here while we take a look in at the Avengers.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll look this up. Um, so fearing the Hulk that will run amok now, the Avengers are on his tail, and of course Thor and Iron Man catch up with him. The Hulk throws a box car at him. That's cool. And he gets away and encounters the Submariner. And first they fight, and then they talk and they say, "Look, why don't we team up and fight the Avengers and fight the world together? We both hate humanity." And so they agree, but both of them have an inner monologue where they say, like, the Hulk says, "I'll string along for a while, then I'll smash him when his guard is down." And Namor says, "He's too strong, too undependable. When he's served his purpose, I'll destroy him." So that, oh boy, is going to lead into, yes, the greatest, maybe the Marvel Comics' finest moment, Avengers 4, coming
Yeah.
soon. Um, but yeah, next issue in our next episode, we'll talking about Submariner and the Hulk fighting the Avengers, the origin and return of Captain America, uh,
Woohoo!
new powers for the Invisible Girl, the origin of Mr. Hyde and the
There we go.
Mandarin, um, the Enchantress, the Executioner, Electro, the Black Knight, and Baron Zemo will all make their first appearances. Wow! Um, uh, the X-Men versus the Blob, uh, Spidey, Bucky, the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, the Mole Man, the Red Skull, all this in Marvel Saga 12, which, man, boy, am I looking forward to that one.
32 pages and still just $1.
Yeah, no ads.
All right.
I think next ish is going to be, whoo, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I mean, the jumps between characters and titles are going to occur more frequently as we've got more titles to work with
Yeah,
in this
and
ongoing Marvel universe.
yeah, and more of these. A whole issue is encapsulated in one panel in a paragraph. Um,
Well, and we've got situations where, um, Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, um, are going to have two features in each issue. So that's four storylines of characters that we've got to work into, in addition to the monthly books of everyone else that's going on at this point.
right.
So, all right. Um, I think that's quite a lot for this episode.
Yeah, we went a little long, but we had
That's
some other stuff at the top of the show
yeah,
to talk about.
yeah,
Um, but hopefully that was enjoyable. If it was a
yeah.
drag, sorry, folks. Um,
And hopefully we'll get issue 12 out here uh, much sooner than our gap between issues 10 and 11. We'll get 12 out there a little bit sooner, and also go ahead and keep an eye out for us in JL May event
yeah,
uh, as we cover the Brave and Bold issue.
yeah, that'll be fun. Jerry, do you want to plug your program?
Yep, worst comic podcast ever. We are a weekly show looking at comics, movies, TV, and whatever else interests us. Every week it's kind of almost like a guessing game as to what we're going to cover or do, but we managed to put something out there, and yeah, we'd invite anyone and everyone to come give us a listen.
Yeah.
I know you've been featuring a lot of classic Comic Reflections episodes, pulling some episodes out of the archives and introducing them to a new audience.
Yeah, I'm slowly. I'm way behind on uploaded. I want to have the whole back catalog up on YouTube as well, just for an archive.
Sure.
So if anything ever happens to me, that stuff is there, and it'll always be there. If I died and stopped paying the fee for the minor fee to keep it on iTunes, the show will disappear. So I'm slowly getting our backlog of old episodes there. Comic Reflections is not putting out much new content. I recently did an episode with Rob Kelly from the Fire and Water Podcast Network, celebrating Steve Skates' 75th birthday. Folks, check that out. Comic Reflections, we will still be putting out new stuff, but it's just really occasionally. I've got tentative plans for later this year to cover both issues of Brother Power the Geek with Hub, who's the host of Tighten Up the Defense, which is the funniest podcast you're likely to listen to in this life or any other. And so we've been talking about doing that for a while. It's going to happen in 2018.
Good.
So watch out for that. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to Comic Reflections. So
all right.
Until next time, folks. Excelsior!
Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, go forever greater. We can show you how to. And when will you be then? You belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, with the dour sour outlook, if you howl, if you moan, you can lose your sauerkraut from keeping trim and in step with the vim and outstep of the Merry Marvel Marching Society.
Be an early riser,
Strive to be ambitious,
speak a little wiser,
try to be judicious,
be a good advisor,
never ever vicious.
and when
Will you be then?
Face front! Lift your head! You're on the winning team!
You'll belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, and your score is nearly zero, do not howl, do not moan. You can be a superhero marching right along through the fighting song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, grow forever greater. We can show you how to